Hello and welcome, Minnesota Farah. We are genuinely very happy to have you with us for our daily coverage of the NFL news. Please subscribe to our channel to support our initiative as we bring to you the latest updates from the world of NFL on a daily basis. Now let's dive deep into our news stories.
NFL fans, welcome to a whirlwind of updates from the NFL that's sure to keep you on the edge of your seats. Let's kick things off with news from the Arizona Cardinals. 1. Arizona Cardinals. In the desert, the Cardinals are keeping a close eye on their star wide receiver Marquise Brown. He's dealing with a pesky hamstring issue and is questionable for their matchup against the Commanders. Tight end Zach Ertz is in a similar boat, nursing a knee injury, while offensive lineman Kelvin Beachum is out with a hand issue. Now, let's move on to our next news. 2. Atlanta Falcons. Over in Atlanta, cornerback Cornell Armstrong has been released from injured reserve with an injury settlement. On the injury front, Cordarrelle Patterson's thigh injury has him listed as questionable to play against the Panthers. Wide receiver Cardale Hodges' ankle is also giving the Falcons a headache, and cornerback Jeff Okudah is out with a foot injury. Now, let's move on to our next news. 3. Baltimore Ravens. In Baltimore, the Ravens are hoping to have their star tight end, Mark Andrews, ready for action, although he's nursing a quad injury. However, cornerback Marlon Humphrey is ruled out with a foot issue. Now, let's move on to our next news. 4. Buffalo Bills. Over in Buffalo, safety Micah Hyde appears to be on the mend, participating fully in their walkthrough on Friday. Moving on, let's explore the Carolina Panthers. 5. Carolina Panthers. The Panthers have made a signing from their practice squad, adding linebacker Chandler Wooten to the roster. Unfortunately, wide receiver DJ Chark is out with a hamstring injury, and Adam Thielen's ankle has him listed as questionable. Meanwhile, head coach Frank Reich is keeping mum on linebacker Brian Burns' status, who is currently seeking a contract extension. Now, let's move on to our next news. 6. Chicago Bears. In the Windy City, linebacker Dylan Cole's hamstring has him questionable for the Packers matchup. Buckle up because we're headed to Cincinnati. 7. Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals star quarterback, Joe Burrow, is set to play against the Browns, despite a calf issue. Defensive end Joseph Ossai is the only player ruled out for the Bengals. Now, let's move on to our next news. 8. Cleveland Browns. The Browns' defensive back Juan Thornhill is questionable to play against the Bengals due to a calf injury. However, good news for the Browns as cornerback Denzel Ward has cleared concussion protocol. Moving on to America's team, the Dallas Cowboys. 9. Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys might be without offensive lineman Tyler Smith due to a hamstring injury, and Tyron Smith's ankle has him listed as questionable. Defensive end Sam Williams is also questionable with a foot injury, while safety Donovan Wilson is doubtful with a calf issue. Let's continue with news from the Denver Broncos. 10. Denver Broncos. Star wide receiver Jerry Jeudy is nursing a hamstring injury, making him questionable for the Raiders game. Cornerback Riley Moss is also questionable with an abdomen injury. Now, shifting gears to Green Bay. 11. Green Bay Packers. Over in Green Bay, they're facing some challenges in the receiving department. Wide receiver Romeo Doubs is questionable with a hamstring injury, and Christian Watson is out with a hamstring issue. Next up, the Houston Texans. 12. Houston Texans. The Texans are dealing with multiple injuries as wide receiver John Mechie III is out with a hamstring issue, while linebacker Blake Cashman is also out with a hamstring problem. Safety Jimmy Ward is out with a hip injury. Plus, there's some drama brewing with wide receiver DeAndre Carter's questionable status. Chandler Jones, who left the team earlier this week, is also out. Now, let's move on to our next news. 13. Indianapolis Colts. Breaking news here. Long snapper Luke Rhodes has signed a hefty 4-year extension, becoming the NFL's highest-paid long snapper. In injury news, running back Zach Moss is questionable with a forearm injury. Next, we're heading to Jacksonville. 14. Jacksonville Jaguars. Defensive lineman Tyler Lacey is out with a hip injury, and safety Antonio Johnson is also out with a hamstring issue. Fasten your seatbelts, we're about to tackle the Las Vegas Raiders. 15. Las Vegas Raiders. Wide receiver DeAndre Carter is questionable to play against the Broncos, but the real headline here is the situation with Chandler Jones, who publicly expressed his reservations about playing for the Raiders. He's out, and cornerback Brandon Facyson is also out with a shin injury. Now, let's move on to our next news. 16. Los Angeles Chargers. In Los Angeles, linebacker Chris Rumph II is doubtful to play against the Dolphins. Hold on to your hats, folks, we're headed to Los Angeles again. 17. Los Angeles Rams. The Rams are facing some challenges heading into their season opener. Quarterback Stetson Bennett is out with a right shoulder injury, and star wide receiver Cooper Kupp is also ruled out. Tight end Hunter Long is dealing with a thigh issue. Moving along to the Miami Dolphins. 18. Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins will be without offensive tackle Terron Armstead, who's dealing with back, ankle, and knee issues. Kendall Lamb is expected to start in his place. Justin Bethel is questionable with a knee injury. Now, let's move on to our next news. 19. Minnesota Vikings. In Minnesota, linebacker Marcus Davenport has been added to the injury report with an ankle injury, making him questionable for their matchup against Tampa Bay. On a different note, running back Myles Gaskin has been cut from the roster. Keep your eyes peeled because we've got more news coming up. 20. New England Patriots. The Patriots are in a bit of a quarterback conundrum as Matt Corral is questionable for Sunday's game, not due to injury but other reasons. Ramondre Stevenson's illness puts him in the questionable category, while wide receiver Devant Parker's knee injury has him listed as questionable. Meanwhile, cornerback Jack Jones is out with a hamstring issue. Now, let's move on to our next news. Stay tuned for more updates as the season unfolds. Thanks for joining us on this journey, and remember, the NFL action is just heating up.